You're watching Dukascopy TV. I'm Elaine Stenson. Chinese leaders have begun a 4-day meeting to set a reform agenda for the next decade as they try to push more sustainable growth after 3 decades of breakneck expansion amid signs of continuing debate on how to implement the reforms. The meeting is currently taking place in Beijing. It began on Saturday and will show just how committed the new leadership is to reform after formally taking power in March. Joining me now on the line to give us an update is Michal Medan from Eurasia Group in London. Michal, the summit started on Saturday. What can you tell us so far?
Well, so far very little has come from the plenum itself. We will basically see a document tomorrow, and that is the reform blueprint for the coming decade. But thus far, any official statements from the plenum have been relatively muted. The whole attention was in the run-up to the plenum, and it will be starting from tomorrow at the effective implementation of policies coming out of it.
What's the main objective for this key meeting?
Well, the third plenum is basically where new leadership outlines its blueprint and roadmap for its decade in power. This one is being very much portrayed as a very significant reform agenda comparable to sort of 2 previous instances. The first one was the third plenum in 1978 when Deng Xiaoping launched the historic reform and opening up that led to China basically getting where it is today. The second instance was 1993, where the third plenum launched the reforms by Premier Zhu Rongji, where there was sort of significant reform of the state-owned enterprises and big reforms to the Chinese economy. So there has been a build-up ahead of this plenum by the leadership that they are going to issue a very comprehensive and bold reform agenda to rebalance the Chinese economy and change very fundamentally the way things work in China.
8 key areas for potential reforms have been suggested, including finance, taxation, land, state assets, social welfare, innovation, foreign investment and governance. What are you expecting and what reforms do you think are needed in your opinion?
Well, we're expecting a pretty bold policy document. It is going to touch upon fiscal reforms, financial sector reforms. There could even be a commitment to liberalize, sort of deregulating interest rates, currency account liberalization. They're going to talk about social reforms and reforming the hukou system, which is the internal migration system. Land reforms are likely to be on the table. Basically, again, a very ambitious blueprint that will move China from an export-dependent economy, one that is heavily reliant on fixed asset investments, to one that is much more consumer-driven. And those are all, very positive reforms that China needs. The other part of it is, of course, the political reform, which we are unlikely to see emerge from the plenum.
What benefits would new reforms offer?
I think they will, over time. Implementation will take time and will be key. We're not going to see changes tomorrow. But over time, they are going to change both the investment landscape in China. There will probably be quite a bit of cutting of red tape and the simplification of approval procedures that will make it easier to do business in China. And we are going to see China move towards a more market-oriented economy, again, gradually and over time. But there are going to be benefits both for private investors and the Chinese economy. I would stress, though, that for the Chinese economy, this is a long-term process. The short term could actually be relatively painful and volatile because we're going to see slower growth rates, we're going to potentially see higher inflation and more losers. Companies going out of business, a little more unemployment, not drastically and not dramatically, but a change from what we've seen in the past. And this will create a little more social volatility and social unrest. And again, the short-term adjustment could be painful, but the long-term trajectory is much more positive.
Okay, Michal, thank you very much for joining me on the line today. And that's all from me for now, but do check back for more updates and interviews coming up this week. Bye for now.